Nice to meet you. So my name is Matthew Frank. I'm a lymphoma specialist at Stanford. I work on CAR T-cell therapies for patients with lymphoma, including follicular lymphoma and mantle cell lymphoma. So for the first time, we're presenting a new clinical trial that's investigating a novel CD22 directed CAR T-cell therapy. So CD22 is a protein found on cancer cells, found on follicular lymphoma and mantle cell. CAR therapy is an immune-based therapy where we genetically modify a patient's immune cells to attack and clear their cancer. So this is a brand new trial, but it was inspired by a prior trial that we've completed in a different lymphoma called diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, where this therapy worked very well for patients who have already had a prior CAR and then progressed anyway. And we've now treated 7 patients, and we're delighted to see that all 7 have responded. So CAR-19 therapy is now FDA approved for patients with many types of lymphoma, including large B-cell lymphoma, follicular lymphoma, and mantle cell lymphoma. I'm grateful to have that therapy. In some cases, to provide these very durable remissions. We'd like to say the word cure, but we never know until patients have lived long enough. But very promising durable remissions for patients who've been through a number of other lines of therapy, including chemotherapy and other therapies. But when a patient's already had that therapy, we worry that another CAR therapy won't work as well. What we're delighted to see is it actually does. It actually works quite well in large B-cell lymphoma. So the difference here is that it's going after a different target on the cancer. So instead of CD19, that protein, it's going after CD22, a different protein. So we're measuring some important things like, can we make it? Because this is the first time we're making it for these indications. And so far we've made the product successfully every time but one. And in that one case, we were able to collect cells from that patient again, and we were successful the second round of manufacturing. We're also measuring how much trouble does it cause a patient? We don't want this to be too toxic, and I'm delighted to say we don't see any neurotoxicity, which is very common with CD19 CARs. We do see cytokine release syndrome, a flu-like illness, but it's not required any ICU care. It's been mostly just fevers and well manageable. So we're measuring toxicity. And then of course, what patients want to know is, does it work? So there's key metrics like overall response rate, complete response rate. So complete response means when we go looking for it on a scan or blood test, we don't see it. And then there's a number of secondary or correlative metrics looking at why it works or how it works or why doesn't it work. And so those are looking at things like how much of the CD22 protein is on the cancer, and does that matter for response? What does the CAR T-cell phenotype, meaning what kind of T-cells are there? Because there's different types of T-cells, and does that pattern matter? And some other metrics of just how well does it work? So how effective is this CD22 CAR for patients with follicular lymphoma and mantle cell lymphoma? So it's still early days. So we just opened the trial about 6 months ago. So we don't have a lot of long-term follow-up. We only have 2 patients with follicular lymphoma that are out 6 months. But what I can tell you is all 4 patients with follicular lymphoma have had a complete response. I mean, when we look for the cancer, we don't see it. And then in mantle cell, we've had 2 out of 3 have a complete response and 1 have a partial response. So it's been a great start so far. And these have been in high-risk patients. So patients who either have had a prior CD19 CAR, or in follicular lymphoma, patients who progress within 2 years of their initial therapy are considered higher risk. And we've had 2 patients like that who've also had a complete response. So delighted to see that these very high-risk patients are responding as well as they are. So this therapy in large B-cell lymphoma, we ran a trial, and the data looked promising enough to the FDA that there's a special designation called breakthrough designation. It essentially says that this is a promising emerging therapy that has the potential to meet a big unmet need. So for comparison, I'll say that this therapy was given to patients who had about a 5.5 to 6 months predicted survival. And when we gave it, that predicted survival moved out to about 25 months. So a major improvement. And really what ended up happening is some patients appear to be cured, and other patients who didn't have a durable remission unfortunately didn't do as well. But because of how safe it was and because of how effective it was, the FDA agreed that this needs to have special designation to help it move through the approval process faster. So 7 patients to start with is great, but we really want to enroll up to 30 plus patients in both follicular lymphoma and an additional 30 plus patients in mantle cell lymphoma. It's important to test it across a lot of different patients because we get a better sense. Every patient's unique. We want to see how it works through lots of different folks. So that's really the next step, is just continue to enroll patients over the next couple of years. And if it looks promising enough, then it warrants a larger, what's called phase 2 trial, where it's not run at Stanford, where we're running this trial, but run across the US or the world to see how it works in the hands of lots of different investigators, a more real world sort of experience. So finish up this trial, move on to the phase 2 trial. So this is, it's always important for patients to realize that this is a phase 1 trial, but there's no placebo here. So this is a real therapy. We're using a dose that we think is a very good optimal dose. If they're interested in the trial, they can reach out to us, and we're happy to talk with them and their physicians. There's lots of effective therapies, and we're just happy to add yet probably one more promising option for everybody.